Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Mum and Son Run podcast. In this episode, we're talking all things ultramarathon. So last year, me and my mum signed up for the Keswick Mountain Ultra Marathon to celebrate her 60th birthday because she's a psychopath. It's safe to say that it didn't go completely to plan. So in this episode, we talk about our very different journeys through this ultramarathon. It's a good one. We hope you like it. Let's get to it. Episode 4. How are you, Mum?
I'm very well, son, and how are you?
I'm doing very, very well. How's your week been? Anything to update us on?
Yeah, it's been a good week this week. Yeah, a good session with my physio on Monday, starting to progress the exercises to rehab my Achilles. Yeah, so that was positive. Along with, a few good walks this week. So started out, walked in the Peak District on Wednesday and then walked with a friend on Thursday. And then for the first time, really since last year, September probably, I went to a park run and two friends very kindly joined me, which was lovely. And we walked a park run and I'm so grateful to the volunteers that kind of stay around and give you a big cheer at the end, as if you've really achieved something amazing. And actually they don't know that I've been injured, but it did feel quite amazing. So just to kind of to go and complete a park run and be actually in the company of runners for the first time, really. A running event, as it were. So it was
Yeah,
good.
I bet it was. I bet it felt good to be back part of the running community because you've been away for quite a
It
while.
did.
And yeah, the volunteers at Parkrun are always great, aren't they?
They're
But yeah,
amazing.
seen a lot of
Yeah.
progress, haven't you, recently with rehabbing your injury, doing plenty of big walks. You've been progressing in the gym as well. Your leg press is getting strong now, isn't it? You're figuring out your imbalance between your left and your right. So
Yeah,
loads to be
definitely.
positive
Yeah.
about. Yeah, and we're
Yeah,
going to watch the Wilmslow Half Marathon tomorrow, aren't we? So we're going to be chanting and
we
shouting at
are.
people.
Absolutely. You've only got a park run to
Yeah.
go. I'm going to shout it wherever they are in
Yeah.
the run.
Yeah. We're breaking all the rules
I'm
tomorrow.
joking, of course. We definitely. Well, we've got friends, haven't we, and family who are running tomorrow. So it'll be good to go down and give them a cheer along. I like Wilmslow, one of my first half marathons ever.
Definitely.
So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
going to
that'll be
be a
good.
fun event. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Um,
How about your week?
yeah, my week's been
How's
good.
the running going?
Good. I finally put together a solid week without getting ill. I mentioned maybe in episode
Yeah.
1 that I'd been struggling with just constant illness, which has been breaking up my running and just been affecting my consistency. But this week I've ran 5 times already, and I'm going to do 10 miles on Sunday. So that'll be just under 40 miles for the week. So I'm happy with that. A couple of speed work sessions in there. Just focusing on bringing down my 5K time and building things back up. I'm trying to not beat myself up about not being as fast as I was before the end of last year, which is difficult at times, but you've just got to meet your body where you're at. And I'm having fun just running consistently again. So yeah, it's been a good week. And this week we're going to talk about ultra marathons. We've both had an experience. We both start laughing as soon as we mention an ultra marathon because we both got experience in the ultra marathon world. And I was looking earlier at some crazy stats about ultra marathon runners. So I've got some here. So the longest ultramarathon ever is the Self-Transcendence 3,100-mile race in New York, in which runners cover 3,100 miles, obviously, over 52 days, circling a single city block in Queens. That sounds like hell on earth.
Mentally, that sounds like it would be so tough.
Because, I mean,
As much as I love New York, I wouldn't want to run around one block of it.
no. And running 3,100 miles is one thing, but seeing the same things over and over again, it's 5,649 laps of the same city block. Wow. I would love to know the dropout
Wow.
rate and how many people have completed that because that is
Yeah.
mental. And then I was looking at some other crazy
Yeah.
stats. Alexander Sorokin from Lithuania holds the world record at 10 hours, 31 minutes, and 39 seconds. And that's averaging a 6 minute, 18 second per mile pace for 100 miles. That is ridiculous.
That's that is ridiculous. I love how both of us kind of went to the mental element of that run rather than the crazy distance that it is,
I
because
mean,
that is
that is
crazy.
so crazy, but that's pretty much the ultra marathon, isn't it? It's mental more than anything. One of the stats that I found actually was that they've done some studies. I don't know, how valid these studies are, but the the conclusions suggest that ultra marathons are 75% psychological because you're gonna feel pain at some point, you're gonna feel tired at some point, and it's your ability to push through
True.
that and stay locked in for sometimes days, maybe even weeks for some of these people. So it is really
Yeah.
about mental resilience. And actually, doing this ultra marathon episode is quite relevant because we've just watched Jamie Lang, haven't we? Run 5 ultra
Yes.
marathons in 5 days. We've been keeping a keen eye on
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. He virtually came past the front
Yeah.
door and we didn't realise, and we were out when he passed. So that was a shame. But yeah, amazing, amazing, and so much valuable money raised for charity as
Mm.
well.
He he
Yeah.
barely did any training for that challenge. I think he said he ran 15 kilometers. That was his max in his preparation to run 5 50K ultras in a row, which is mental. The delusion that he had thinking that a 15K would set him up nicely to run 50K even once,
Yeah.
let alone 5 times. But that just goes to show how much your body can go through if you're willing to push it through those tough moments. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a great idea to do that, but
Oh no,
do you know
no.
what really stood out to me was the way he crossed the finish line. So for anyone listening or watching, go and watch him throughout day 1, 2, 3, 4, and most of 5. He's hobbling, he's injured, he's hurting, he's crying. But as soon as he's near the finish line, he's sprinting and his form looks perfect
Yeah.
and he's suddenly rapid. And I just think that's like such a lesson in like the way you think. So if you know you're near the end, it can bring out a second wind. It can completely change the way you feel. And the way he sprinted across that finish
Yeah.
line, considering he'd ran all of those ultras in a row, was pretty impressive. And obviously, the money that he raised for charity was the main thing and amazing to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, absolutely. And he didn't Greg James run with him through Stockport in a wedding
He
dress?
did, yeah. So he did his bit, of course.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering whether the people of Stockport even noticed something as crazy as someone in a wedding
No.
dress, because it's fairly common to see people dressed up around the Stockport area. So
Oh, he
I
just fit
bet that
right
didn't
in.
even get so much as a second glance.
Yeah, definitely didn't. It definitely didn't.
Yeah,
Stockport is a weird and wonderful place. In other ultra
and we
news,
can say that because we
we
live
can
it.
say that, yeah, we can. And so we have a right to, and we have lots of experiences. But in other
Absolutely.
ultramarathon news, the Barclays Marathon this year had
Yeah,
0 finishers.
yeah. Yeah, I think that is it Gaz Cantrell, the organizer of that race, has kind of looked at people actually finishing it last year, sorry, and thought, no, I'm not having that again. So he's gone out of his way to make those loops more difficult, and
He took it
yeah,
personally, didn't he, that somebody finished it. He said, "Not on my
I
watch."
think so. I think so. It would seem so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah,
well, I think you could call probably any ultra crazy, but there are some that are just definitely more crazy than others, and the Barkley fits into that bracket.
absolutely, yeah. And ours kind of slots nicely somewhere on the crazy scale. It's not the most crazy thing you'll ever do because the distance is 50K, so it's 33 miles, I think. Is that right?
Yeah,
But there was, I think, 4 or 6 thousand feet of ascent because it was in the Lake District, so there was plenty of climbing, wasn't there? Um, so that really
yeah,
brings us nicely onto
yeah.
Why did you decide at your 60th birthday that that was the right time for you to get involved with an ultra marathon?
So I suppose having run marathons, half marathons, trail halves, I was looking for something that marked the occasion. Um, and an ultra seemed like the logical kind of next step. Um, and I think when you reach the wonderful age of 60, I don't know if I'll call it a wonderful age actually, let's just call it the age of 60. I suppose I'm looking to defy the inevitable kind of slowing down of my body, and just looking to show and act as a role model to people to say, I'm 60 and, I can still run and I can still churn out PBs, etc. And this was that next kind of step to say, and I can take part in an ultra. And of course, I can't ask you the same question because you got roped in as you know, uh, I'd like family members. I reached out to friends and family that, a, a big part of my running world and of my world outside of running and said, come on, who wants to do it with me? And understandably, most people said, are you having a
Yeah, we had a
laugh?
few people pipe up and say,
Um,
yeah, I'll do the 5K or the 10K. Because for anyone that doesn't know, the Keswick Mountain Ultra Festival, I think it's called, I might have,
Keswick
Keswick
Mountain
Mountain
Festival.
Festival has a load of races across a full weekend, loads of different distances. I think
Yeah.
it has walk,
And
it has,
walks. Yeah.
weren't some people taken out on boats, maybe, or there was swimming as well?
Yeah, there was a swim. I think one of the runs takes you out on a boat over Derwent Water and you start over the starting point is over the other side of Derwent Water and runs back into
That's right.
Keswick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a really varied for anybody listening or watching who's kind of vaguely interested. It's a fantastic weekend event with, it is a festival event, so there's lots of things going on in the festival village, wasn't there? There was, lots of places to eat, have a drink, speakers, music in the most amazing location. So right
Unbelievable
on the
location.
banks of Derwent Water. Even if you're not interested in any of the events, just to even go there and be part of it would be a really special thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was really well ran. The exhibition was in the most beautiful spot, and just the energy and the vibes there were amazing. Everybody was in good spirits. Everybody's
Yeah.
there to support or get involved and push their limits. And there's maybe 10Ks. There's a run up Skidor, isn't there? Which was crazy.
Yeah.
And then we entered into the 50-kilometer ultra. Um,
Yeah.
and we had, it's safe to say, pretty different experiences. What we didn't account for
Yeah.
was the weather, because the Lake
No.
District is one of the wettest places on earth. It never stops raining there, but it's our favorite place. It's important to mention that the reason we chose the Lake District is that it plays a huge role in our family. We feel strongly connected to
It
it
does.
through generations, going back to granddad, and we all love it, and it has a special place in our hearts. So to do an ultra was one thing, to get to spend a whole day out in the Lake District just made it even more special. So it was the perfect ultra for us both to get involved in. And we just happened to pick the year that it was 25 or 6 degrees, no wind. And yeah, that
No cloud.
no cloud,
Full
no
sun.
shade. It was brutal to say the least.
It
So
was.
talk about that morning, that getting prepared for the ultra, getting yourself ready and getting to the start line.
I mean, in lots of ways, it's similar to getting ready for a road race, whatever distance that might be. And in other ways, it differs because there's a list of kit. So they'll give you a list of compulsory kit. And in this particular instance, they spot check the kit. In other ultra races, they will do more than spot check kit. They'll actually come round and check every single vest for equipment. So I suppose the night before was all about, we were staying the weekend, so obviously the planning starts before that. The planning starts when you're actually making your way up to the lakes or before you get to the lakes. And we had a WhatsApp group, didn't we? So there were 6 of us that took part, and we had a WhatsApp group. So we'd had lots of messages backwards and forwards about kit and recommendations, which is great because we'd got one person amongst the 6 that had run ultras before. So, could post some recommendations, and then I got lots of recommendations when I went down to the running show earlier in the year, so I could post those in. So I suppose the preparation, like for lots of races, goes back a long time. So the morning really is kind of all about the getting fueled up, making sure you're doing those double, triple checks of your vest, making sure that you've got everything that you need to have and a little bit extra. And it was really crazy because we're there, we've got to have wet weather gear, that covers us head to foot, hat, gloves, etc. And like you've just said, it's one of the crazy hot weekends that we had in the UK last year. So we're packing all this stuff, absolutely knowing we're not actually going to need this stuff, but we know that the spot checks take place. So yeah, and these kits are there for a reason. The weather in the lakes can turn on a sixpence, as we know from walking in the lakes. It can be a beautiful day that turns into a rain fest, or it can actually be the other, and it can be unexpected. It's close to the coast, isn't it? So weather can blow in, etc. So it's really important, I think, for those people that might be thinking about, is an ultra for me? It's the fact that you will have to carry kits on your back and factor that into your training. So, lots of the training that went with the ultra was with the vest and kit in the vest to replicate what would be happening on race day. So yeah, so by the time we actually rocked up to a very early start. Was it
I think
6:30?
so, yeah. So we
Was it a
were up at
6:30? I
maybe
think it was a 6:30 start.
AM maybe.
We were yeah, to obviously fuel and be ready and travel the short distance from where we were staying into
Yeah.
Keswick. So really, by the time you rock up on the start line, you're pretty confident that you've got everything that you need to have, plus well-stocked aid stations on the way round that are going to help you with your sustenance en
Were
route.
you nervous on that start line? Because I remember it's the only race I've done where I wasn't nervous. And that's strange because it's the longest distance. It's a distance that I hadn't ran. It was 6,000 feet of ascent or 4,000, I can't remember which, sorry. And it was the complete unknown. But just the prospect of being out there with you and everybody else and the weather being so nice, and then just a chance to be out in the Lake District all day with the views and knowing what was coming. And there's a different feel because none of us had a time in mind. We didn't know what we were capable of. It was almost like going back to that first marathon, but it just took all the pressure off. And I just felt like I was there to enjoy it and just to push my limits. And for some reason, I had no
Yeah.
nerves. So I don't know about you. Were you nervous or were you ready?
I think I was more excited, probably a few excited nerves, but I was just so happy to kind of be there with really good friends that I knew would get loads out of it. So perhaps I should have been more nervous in hindsight, but no, I don't think I was. And I think I agree with you. I think because we were all there as a group, and although we didn't end up running together the entirety of the run, just setting out as a group, it's not something I've ever really done before. I've always, even if there's people that I know in the race, and even if I'm on the start line with them, I've then gone off and run my own race. I'm not one to really run with other people, but that was different. It's probably one of the biggest learnings from the ultra was that I think we had a vision, or perhaps I had a vision, that we'd all stick together as a group and we'd bimble along and it would be, a jolly day out. And I think I've learned that an ultra, in the same vein as any other race, is one that you need to do at your own pace, because obviously you're so much faster. So you would have been probably very frustrated if you'd have had to
That's a good
stay.
place to start, isn't it? Because my full intentions, and this is going to make me sound like a bit of a arsehole and like I deserted you, and maybe in some ways I did, Mum. But
You definitely deserted
well,
me, but
I deserted everyone in the end. It wasn't personal to you, but Mark will have something to say about that. So we had the intention of
yeah,
start doing the whole thing together, and I was planning on that throughout. But it became apparent quite early on that there were two paces between our group because there were six of us. So there were three of us that were gradually just pulling away, and there were three
yeah,
who were going at their own pace as well. And I was
yeah.
filming it, so I had my camera with me, and I really wanted to make this amazing video for you for your birthday. Safe to say, it didn't turn out too good because you were in it for about 5 seconds. But maybe I can give it to Mark for his birthday because he's in it a lot more than you are. Um,
I think you should.
but it, it's difficult because, and anyone listening who's been running for quite a while will know that there are certain paces that you can run comfortably, and then there are certain paces, even like running more slowly, that do something to your form and technique that no longer feel comfortable, and they almost are taking more energy for going at a slower pace because you're just not
Yeah,
efficient at that pace. So I was really trying, and I know Mark and Jason were as well. We were all trying to stay together, but it was just something that was happening naturally because early on in the ultra there was quite big climbs, and I think the climbs were separating us quite a lot. Maybe it was stride length, maybe it was just you guys were taking it a bit easier up the hills and we were maybe going a bit steadier. And the front three broke off fairly quickly, it's safe to say. And I'd say
yeah.
beyond maybe mile 4 or 5, we didn't cross paths again until
No.
the finish line. We met at the finish line. So I want to start off with your experience. If you can kind of talk us through
Okay.
how it went, because there was a lot to it. And I don't know if I've ever just sat down with you and really got all of the information on what happened. So talk us through that kind of first 10 to 15 miles of that ultra.
So it didn't feel great from the get-go. So other than, so on the start line, it felt amazing, that all of the excitement, the beautiful location, that utter joy at like being out in the Lake District on that kind of day was phenomenal. And I was so thankful that, I'd got such good friends that were there really to help me celebrate, my big birthday, and grateful to them. But as soon as I started running, something just didn't feel right from the get-go. And we started the first descent up the back of Waller Crag, I think it was, and it just felt incredibly difficult. And don't get me wrong, it's quite a steep ascent, but even at walking pace, I thought, this doesn't feel
Yeah.
great. And I thought, well, it's early in the morning,
So was this physical then? Was it physical that it didn't feel great, or were you
Yeah,
mentally feeling it was
no,
physical?
physically, it didn't feel great. It didn't feel great. I felt sapped of energy at a point where I shouldn't have done really. And strangely enough, because we did the Keswick Park run, didn't we, as a run, a lead up run to the ultra. We did the Keswick Park run the day before. I remember thinking then that the park run didn't feel that brilliant either. But sometimes that can happen, and then you go on to have an amazing race. So I didn't really think too much about it. So the first ascent didn't go great. And as you say, we'd separated off into two groups, and we're all experienced runners. So, we totally understand that need for people to do their own thing, and that sometimes what you plan, and as long as, you're in a safe place to kind of for people to go off and do their own thing, which we all were, it's absolutely the right thing to do. So the three of us stayed together, myself, Pete and Stacey, and we agreed that we would stay together. That was our plan moving forward, that we would support one another around it. And And then it carried on not feeling great. And I can't really put my finger on it, but like I say, felt sapped of energy. And then I tripped and fell. So near Wattonlath, I tripped over one of the boulders and I fell. I didn't particularly hurt myself. I can't say that's a
Well,
factor
you're
in
used
kind
to
of what
falling
happened
over.
after that. But I fell over a million times in runs. I could write a book on a number of different falls I've had, most of which, thankfully, just result in me with wounded pride more than anything else. And this was one of them. I don't even think my pride was wounded. I think I just picked myself up and carried on. We got to the first of the aid stations. We were having that realization that we were going a lot slower than we thought we were going to be going. The weather being, even at that time in the morning, it was such a hot day, the weather being a factor. But we were, and there's a cut-off, so we knew we had to move at a certain pace, but we were doing fine. We were well within that. So first of the aid stations came and went, and off we carried on. And then the biggest ascent, well, for me anyway, may not be for you, but the biggest ascent for me for the ultra was Honister Pass. And by that time, the sun was beating down. There was no shade. I was well hydrated, well fueled, etc. But I started to feel very
It was
dizzy
brutal.
going up the Honister Pass. Yeah, it was brutal. There's no other word for it. And so I thought, because I've had dizziness in a run before and it did result in me falling and passing out. And so I was starting to think, okay, this doesn't feel great, but carried on. And I let Stacey and Pete go a little bit in front of me. And I kind of was just doing my own thing and said, I'll meet you up at the top of Honister, where there was another of the aid stations. So got up to the aid station and thought, right, get some fuel on board. So got some more fuel on board, plenty of water, topped up the flasks and what have you. And we had a water spray, thanks to Jason and his
Great
experience.
idea.
It was a great idea. We had bottles of water spray, so had a good spray, good motivational chat with the wonderful volunteers that are manning the station. And off we went, and we had a big downhill, and you would think, well, yeah, that's lovely. You've got a chance to get your breath back. Not on the downhill that we had. The downhill was as difficult, if not more difficult, than the uphill. And the dizziness started to get worse. And I thought, right, okay. I started to think about the ultra in a way that or the race in a way I wouldn't think about a road race, because I knew that once we got down to Buttermere, that really the second half of the ultra, if anybody had to come out to me because I did fall or anything happened, I knew it was a helicopter coming in. I knew that I'd be mountain rescue. And I started to formulate in my mind whether it was wise to continue and put myself in that position, Stacey and Pete in a position where they're with somebody injured and a mountain rescue coming out. So on the way down, I thought, you can either take a chance here, you can take a risk and you can carry on, and the dizziness might go off and it might be all fine. And then I talked to myself and thought, is this a time to take that risk with the weather the way it is and the remote nature of the second half of the ultra? I knew that Buttermere was the last opportunity I'd got where actually I could make my own way back to the start and not impact anybody else's day. So I started to float the idea by Stacey and Pete, and we were coming down, and it was, and they were saying, well, see how you feel when you get down. But I think I pretty much, in my own mind, I'd made my decision. Now, it was the toughest decision to make because 6 people are in the Lake District helping me celebrate a big birthday and doing an event because I'd asked them to. And all of a sudden it's going to be an event I'm not finishing. But I had to put that on one side because that's just pride and ego and all of those kind of things that didn't want me to be the one at the finish that didn't finish. But I knew it was the right thing to do. And I knew that if somebody else was in that position, that I would advise them it was the right thing to do. So I said, I'm going to finish at Buttermere and I'm going to get the bus. There's a bus stop there. I can see myself back. I want you to carry on, and I want you to finish it for me, you know, and gave them, took my number off and gave the number over and asked them to give it in at the aid station, which was as per the instructions that we were given. And yeah, so I waved them off into the distance. One of the hardest things probably that I've ever had to do is watch them go, but wish them well, you know. And I while I was at Buttermere and I was waiting for the bus, a guy came in with a number on, and he started talking to me, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I don't know whether I didn't look okay, but I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I said, I was taking part in the Keswick Mountain Festival Ultra, and unfortunately for me, this is the end of the road. And this guy, he looked like a weathered ultra runner, if you know what I mean. He had that look about him, and he was. And he was actually taking part in another ultra that was absolutely crazy. It was taking in so many Wainwrights in the day. And he said to me, "I'm going to finish here as well." And he said, "Today's not the day to be a hero. You've made the right decision, or try and be a hero," or words to that effect. And he said, "The mountains will always be there. Sometimes you have to, with this kind of event, you have to make these decisions." So that made me feel a little bit better. And so I did. That was the end of my ultra experience. So it wasn't actually an ultra for me. In fact, it was only 14 miles. And I jumped on the bus. And the next time I saw you, I was actually at the finish
I was thinking,
and got the, I mean,
what on earth has happened? Because to see you at the finish line, I thought, oh no, I've been beat by my mum at an ultra marathon.
no,
You've
you knew you hadn't.
sprinted past me at some point. Uh,
I know.
But no, I think that you made the right decision. The wise old man was right.
Yeah,
The ultra marathons will always be there.
yeah,
And yes, you're there to
yeah,
push your limits, but you're there to push your limits within a safe, boundary. And if you're feeling dizzy on a hot day like that, and like you say, that
yeah.
second half of the ultra was beyond, it was probably the most difficult part of any race I've ever done. In fact, it was without a doubt. And the thought of you not feeling great 15 miles in and pushing yourself through that, yeah, I'm really glad that you made the right call and you made the safe call. And I know that you'll feel like you've got unfinished business because I know how competitive you are. And I I am looking forward to the day that I see you cross the finish line of an ultra because I don't doubt that it's going to happen at some
Yeah.
point in the future. So yeah,
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, on the flip side, to be there at the finish and be able to kind of cheer everybody else in over the line was absolutely amazing. Um, you know, it didn't make up for my disappointment, but it certainly
yeah.
helped. And being able to cheer, seeing some very broken people coming
Mm.
in on that day and being able to give them that final kind of cheer up the hill, because it was up a hill. That's somebody's cruel way of finishing a run, isn't
Yeah, that
it?
was a bit sadistic, wasn't it?
Very sadistic. So that did make up for it in some ways. And, I don't look back on the weekend and feel anything but pleasure at the thought that, we had family up there, came up for the weekend. It was, the whole the whole experience was a really positive one for me, and you learn something from everything that you do. I'm a great believer in that. So, I learned an awful lot that day, and some days it's just not your day. It's only my second ever DNF. The first one being the time that I felt dizzy, fell, and ended up at hospital in the Wilmslow 10K. So, which we're going to see tomorrow along with the half
We are.
marathon. But it's only the second time it's ever happened. It's not something I'm eager to repeat. That's the DNF, not the ultra. I do feel like I've got unfinished business, and I feel like it's in Keswick because it is such a, like you said at the beginning, it's such a special place for all the families. So yeah, But first, I've got to
Yeah,
rehab the
let's
Achilles and
let's
actually
rehab the
get back.
Achilles before we get you signed up for the Keswick Mountain Ultra,
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
imagine will be coming up in May. So there'll be plenty of people training for that at the moment,
yeah.
which is really cool. And I
There
would
will
be
be, which is
eager
phenomenal.
to do it again as well. And I think the fact that you didn't finish it this first time just is going to make it feel so much sweeter when you do cross the finish line.
Yes,
And I
I
look
think
forward
so.
to
I
that
think
day.
so too.
But yeah, I guess
Yeah. So I'm there. I'm there getting the bus back, back to Keswick. Meanwhile, you're on the second half of the ultra. So how was that? So were you still with Jason and Mark at this point? Were you on your own? What was happening?
it's a strange one because there wasn't really any discussions had throughout of we're going to break off. Even when the six of us broke off into two groups of three, there was no discussion. It just happened
Yeah,
naturally. So me,
it did.
Mark, and
Yeah.
Jason went on, and we were running together. And then Jason broke off for whatever reason, and me and Mark continued on. He said he'd catch us up. And that was the last we saw of Jason as well. So then it became two. So it was me and Mark, and we were making good time and enjoying ourselves. It was really difficult getting over the Honister Pass. And when you say I only ended up doing 14 miles, that 14-mile run, including the Honister Pass, is a ridiculously hard run. So credit to you for even,
Yeah.
especially if you weren't feeling great, for getting through that part of it. But when you drop down after the Honister Pass, you then run around Buttermere and Crummock Water, and the aid stations just started to feel further and further apart because of the heat. I felt like the longer the race went on, just the more dehydrated I was getting, the more the sun was starting to impact me. And because it felt like really dry heat, it wasn't kind of like a normal summer's day in the Lake District. And maybe that was because of I was running, and going up, doing a lot of climbing. So my body temperature will have been elevated anyway, but it was really, really difficult conditions to run in, even when there was long flat periods of the run, which it was quite flat around the two lakes. And at some point, I started to feel that Mark was dropping off slightly, and there became a few groups ahead of us. And I had an eagerness to get to the next aid station because I was feeling quite dehydrated. And I know that's not a good reason to put your foot down, but I was in a comfortable pace. It was on flat ground. So I just let whatever pace came to me naturally because in an ultra, I'm not thinking I need to hit this split or that split. You're just kind of turning your legs over and you're really focusing on how you feel. It's okay to walk, it's
Mhm.
okay to do a slow jog, it's okay to push it a little bit if you feel like you're in a good place. So eventually me and Mark broke off as well, and I ran the second half. So at around 25K, I broke off and I ended up running the second half on my own. And
Mhm.
unlike you, I hadn't looked at the route and the elevation profile and how difficult certain sections of the race were, which is a real schoolboy error. But the ultra marathon was kind of in the back of my mind. I had the A goal of running the Milton Keynes marathon, and I used the
Yeah,
Milton
that's
Keynes
right.
marathon training as my training for the ultra because there was 2 weeks in between the two races. So I never actually did anything specific for an ultra. I didn't really do any hill work in that marathon prep. So it wasn't the best preparation, but I feel like I had the distance and the aerobic base to complete it. So the second half took every ounce of my willpower and discipline and resilience. I developed blisters. I made every mistake you could make in an ultra marathon. I wore trail shoes that I hadn't worn in properly. So as we're coming over the Honister Pass, I was putting blister plasters on both feet because I had huge blisters at the back. And so every step hurt from the Honister Pass to the finish line. That just added a different element and yeah, it took everything out of me. And so I was filming the ultra because I wanted to put something together for you. So the first half, when I was feeling pretty good and I was with people, I was filming and I had loads of content. And when it got difficult, my mind went to a different place. It was no longer thinking this would be a good place for content. It was left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. When's the next aid station? And so if you, there's a video on YouTube of the Keswick Mountain Ultra by me, and if you want to see the first half of the race and then the finish line, go and give it a watch because there's absolutely nothing from the second half, and that tells you how difficult it was.
Well, I wasn't in the second half, so it probably accurately reflects if it's a video that
Exactly.
you were doing for
Really, I
me.
was doing you a
It's
favor.
great because I was in the first half and then I was at the
Yeah,
finish
I didn't
line.
want to
So,
rub it in
you
and
know
show
what?
you
Yeah.
parts of the ultra you hadn't done. So really, I was doing you a favor. Yeah, I like that story better. But to cap it
Yeah.
off, the last K, and it turned out to be like 52 kilometers. It wasn't 50K because I remember turning this corner and I knew I was getting close to Keswick now, but we were coming around the back through these beautiful country roads. And on my watch, I was at 49K. And I thought, 1 kilometer, James, 1 kilometer. And I'm running towards this volunteer, and the volunteers are obviously really helpful, really enthusiastic. And she says, "Wow, you're looking strong." And I said, "Thank you." And she goes, "Only 3K to go." And I was like, "Huh? What do you mean? Okay, I've got 49K on my watch." And then my heart sunk. And I'd convinced myself, James, all you've got is 1K. And 1K, the drop in my mood, every step then started to feel heavier. And that was a really difficult
Isn't that
end.
amazing though, that because you were strong at that point and then mentally that realization
Yeah,
that you'd got
exactly.
3K to go had an impact on your body by the sounds of it.
It was kind of
Okay.
the opposite of what happened to Jamie Lang because he saw that finish line and had a huge boost and he went from hobbling to sprinting and I went from feeling good to God, every stride is heavy just because I went from thinking I've got 1K to I've got 3K. But eventually I knew I was really close. I could hear the tannoy coming from the exhibition. I could hear the crazy Scottish guy who was on the microphone. And I don't know if he does it every year, but if you go to Keswick Mountain Festival, he will grill you coming over the finish line. If you're running funny, if you're gasping for air, he's going to take the piss out of you. He was amazing. And you kind of want that near the end, don't you? But the feeling of
Yeah.
coming up that hill, and I filmed this bit because once I knew I was close to the finish line, I had a bit of a, okay, I need to film this. And I'm running up this hill and I see all the family on the left-hand side cheering me. And it was one of the best feelings I've ever had. Like, it was so, just to know that I pushed myself through that whole race because it was so challenging. And for everybody, it was so challenging. And it looked like a war zone at the end of that race, didn't it? There were people on the floor, there was all
Yeah.
sorts going on,
Oh gosh,
people
yeah.
getting medical attention, people passing out. It was crazy, but the sense of pride and the emotion I felt having you all cheer me on there was just a moment that I'll never forget. And sometimes I watch over that video and it just makes me feel so happy. On the one hand, at that
Yeah.
point, I obviously didn't know that you hadn't finished, and I saw you kind of hiding behind you.
I hid behind, so I didn't want the end of your race to be, oh God, Mum's there. What's wrong with Mum? Is she
Yeah,
okay? I didn't want your finish to be, I wanted it to be all about you and the amazing achievement of running an
yeah,
ultra. So I hid behind Jen, who's quite a bit taller
yeah.
than I am. So I hid behind her and said, and so I was aware, I was cheering you in from behind Jen, but I wanted to be a little
Yeah,
inconspicuous.
and that says everything about you, really. And I wish that that day had gone to plan for you, but I'm so glad you made the right decision. And
Yeah.
I think that the sense of accomplishment you're going to feel, and I don't want to put pressure on you to do it because look, the value of you doesn't go up or down whether you complete that marathon.
Yeah.
But I would love to see you cross that finish line having,
Yeah.
had a go at it once before and
Yeah.
it just not have been your day. I think that would be such an amazing moment. So I hope that that day comes. And yeah, it was an amazing event. It was so well ran. I would recommend anybody who's thinking about venturing into the ultra marathon world to give that race a go because it's scenery wise, challenge wise, it's as good as you'll get. And it's only, I say only, it's only
Agree more.
33 miles. So it's not,
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's a technical run like no other, though. And I think that these are all the learnings, though, aren't they, from everything that you do, just the sheer energy taken in placing one foot in front of the other is so much different to being out on a tarmac road. But the payback is the amazing scenery, the amazing people that you meet, the amazing volunteers and all of that, and an ultra marathon is not going to be for
yeah,
everybody, but it's perfectly achievable for anybody that puts the mind to it. And I think I would approach it differently now. So like you, I had London to train for. So London was my A goal last year. So really I know it sounds crazy really to say the ultra was a bit of a bolt
mm,
on, and it was. And I hope that nobody listening or watching feels that that's me not paying enough respect to the event, because I absolutely respected it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have actually taken myself out of the event halfway round. But I would make the ultra my A goal if I was ever in a position that my Achilles is strong enough to put me back in the ballpark for an ultra. I would make it my A goal. I wouldn't have any
yeah.
other
And on
goals
the
at
one
all.
hand, I do think it's okay to use a marathon prep as a prep for an ultra because you
Yeah,
are just racking up that mileage. But then
yeah.
racing London and the recovery that it takes to go from that, and I think you had 4 weeks in between,
Four
was
weeks, yeah.
it's a big ask. That is the minimum that I would say to one of my clients, okay, yeah, we might just get away with it, but you might still be carrying some fatigue at that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was a big ask. And
Uh,
I think, yes, some more specific training in your marathon prep towards hills, towards the terrain that you're going to be running on would definitely have done you well. But I just think that it
yeah.
wasn't your day. For whatever reason, your body, it wasn't that you weren't capable of finishing it. There was something deeper than that, like a physiological reason that day for I don't know what it was, but I
Yeah,
know that you were
I don't know what it
physically
was.
capable. I just think your body just wasn't feeling great that day and you made the right call. So what do you think it is that draws people to the ultra marathon that's potentially different to the marathon space?
I think it's one of the few things. I think it's almost like for runners a natural progression, isn't it? I think if you've dallied with a few marathons and you've perhaps done like I've done, you've run marathons in this country, then you've gone and run marathons abroad, and then it's almost like, well, what
Mhm.
next? And I suppose the 50K is a what next for me, certainly. So I think that for a lot of runners that would be a key reason. I think for some people, I think it's that there is less pressure ironically, there's less pressure when you're running something like an ultra because it's not all about time. So there's not those pressures of constant, watching, looking at your watch. So I think that appeals to some people rather than the pressure of being out on the road and feeling like you've got to run a PB and you're always striving for that next kind of best time in a run. Ultras don't give you that. They're also, I suppose, there's lots of online content now that is showing the wonderful world of ultras. So I think people want to dip their toe in the water and see what it's all about.
Yeah, it's the new
What do you think? I mean, those are just a few of my
No,
thoughts.
it's the new in thing to run an ultra. I have in the past questioned like, has it been taken too far at points? Because there's a constant one-upmanship. But I do love the pursuit of what are humans capable of? What's the human body capable of when you
Mm,
push it? We're seeing the hardest geezer run
yeah.
50K a day sometimes double across Africa and crossing a full continent.
Of course,
At the
yeah,
moment, he's running the whole length of New Zealand. We're seeing people run from the UK top to bottom, and they're getting crazier and crazier.
yeah,
And that does appeal to people when they see people pushing their limits, and seeing somebody achieve like that is contagious. So just going standing at the finish line of a marathon will have you wanting to run one yourself. That's how I ended up booking one, because I was looking at everybody crossing the finish line and I was jealous because I knew what had gone into it, and I saw the happiness and I thought, what an amazing
yeah,
achievement. When you see these people, because everything's documented on social media, when you see these people doing these amazing things, it does make you want to dip your toe in. But it's
yeah,
almost made the marathon seem like it's normal or not a big achievement, and it's a huge achievement. But I would recommend to
massive.
anybody who, wants to push their boundaries and has run a marathon, to dip their toe in and see how they feel about an ultra marathon. Go and trail run. Trail running for me is the best brand of running. It's the best type of. I'm never happier than when I'm out trail running in like a
Yeah,
beautiful place. Running can take you to some
I couldn't agree
amazing
more.
places. And if I had my choice, if you said to me you could only do one type of running for the rest of your life, I would pick trail running all day, every day. And that lends itself to ultras.
So would I. So would I. And as someone who started out on the road and only ever ran on roads to begin with, the discovery of the sheer delight of running out in the countryside on trails. If you haven't done it, if you're a road runner listening or watching this podcast, go and give it a
Yeah,
go. It's phenomenal. It is phenomenal.
absolutely.
And, we're lucky enough to live near some amazingly beautiful trails. So we could go and do that really easily. And in fact, now for us, it's a good job we enjoy trail running, because really our options for road running would be pretty limited where we are,
Yeah, where
because
we
we're
are,
all about trails.
it's no, you either start with a mile uphill or a mile downhill, and you have to repay the favor on the way back.
Yeah.
So, but we love it, and I love this area so much. I would love to start a run club around here. The only problem is the accessibility of it, but we're in one of the best spots in the north to go out running. It's really fun, and I think that kind of
Yeah.
ties it up nicely. So I hope that in the
Yeah.
future, hundreds of episodes down the line, or maybe not that far down the line, who knows, that we have a Keswick Ultra Marathon round two, and we're talking all about how you crossed the finish line and you had unfinished business and you got back there, and that would be an amazing,
Yeah.
amazing day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's definitely there as one of those unfinished business things. And if it doesn't happen, well, it wasn't meant to happen, and something else will happen. Another experience will happen in its place that will give me, as much joy. But it's certainly kind of something that when I'm back running, if I'm back running, I'm not taking anything for granted with this injury. I'll certainly be keeping in my line of sight.
Yeah. I think that
Yeah, yeah.
rounds things off nicely, and hopefully that's kind of perked a few people's interests into maybe dipping their toes into the ultra marathon world. So we hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
If you're listening on Spotify, click the little star button and give us 5 stars. Give it a like, subscribe to the podcast, everything else that you're supposed to do. And
But before we go, today we've been talking about some of the amazing people that we run with, and we want to open this podcast up to people that we know and even people that we don't know who would like to come and join us and have a chat. And it might be that you come and chat about your journey into ultra marathons, or your journey into marathons, or your journey into running, or your journey into anything. So we'd like to extend an invitation to people out there to say, please drop us a DM on Instagram if you would like to come and join us for an episode, have a coffee, chat all things running.
we're definitely looking for people with cool stories and cool experiences in the running world. So if you think that that's you, drop us a message. You can find me at JT Run Coach on Instagram, or you can message us privately. It's completely up to you, but we look forward to hearing from you. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.